Hi, I'm Sriransky-Dnziger, speaking from Jerusalem, and it's my absolute honor to introduce these two wonderful ladies that I will be conversing with today. Rachel Goldberg-Polin, educator, mother of Hirsch Goldberg-Polin, who was stolen from the Nova Festival on October 7th past year, and survived for a long time until he was murdered in Gaza in a tunnel with 5 other wonderful young men and women. And Rachel Goldberg, violinist, a nurse, and mother of 8, and wife of Rav Avi Goldberg, who since October 7th served for over 250 days in reserve duty up north and fell in battle a little bit over 2 weeks ago. So thank you so much for coming here. Thank you so much for being willing to speak with us. And we are gathered here today to mark the Yortzeit, the anniversary of the passing of the original Rachel, the one we're all named after in one way or another, Rachel Imenu. Rachel Imenu lived a short life and is best known as a mother because her overriding passion was for motherhood, to have children. She didn't live long enough to see her 2 sons grow into adulthood, but according to the prophet Jeremiah, she continued to fulfill a maternal role for all of the Jewish people, for all of the descendants that came from these tribes and others for millennia, because the prophet describes how when the Babylonians destroyed the temple and took us into captivity, into exile, and to death, she was weeping and crying, and it was her weeping, Rachel's weeping, that reached God and convinced him to show compassion to the people. Now, the image of the mother who cries for her children, who advocates for her children, is of course an image that has been charged with new meaning for us this year. But before we get to that and to the painful losses that are here with us in the room and in our hearts, I want to talk a little bit about all the beautiful and sad human network that connects the two of you. You both live practically in the same street in Jerusalem. You're both either olot, immigrants from the United States, or children of immigrants from the United States, part of the big story of our return to this land. And you have encountered or had connections with each other's families over the years. And I want to first turn to you, Rachel, and ask you if you can tell us a little bit about your connection with Rachel's family, the Wolf family.
Sure. So many years ago, when I was 22 years old, I came to Israel for what I thought was going to be a 6-week program at the Pardes Institute here in Jerusalem. And I ended up staying and studying there for 5 years. One of the many places that I was studying for 5 years. And my favorite teacher, who I met that year, was Rabbi Tzvi Wolf, Rachel's father. And he was my halakha teacher, and I ended up sweeping the category. I took everything over the next few years. Whatever he was teaching, I would take his classes. And that year, that was in 1993, I was in the winter of that year, Rabbi Wolf invited me to his house for Shabbat dinner, and I met a very cute little girl who sat next to me at that meal, that first meal. And we bonded over our names both being Rachel or Rachel. And Rachel told me at the time that she was a violin player, and it was Shabbat, and so she couldn't play violin for me. So I ended up coming to their house at a different time during the week so that she could play her violin for me. But over the years, I shared a few meals with the Wolf family, and when I ended up getting married, I asked Rabbi Wolf to sign our ketubah, which is still hanging on our wall in our apartment here with his name at the bottom. Wow. And so I've always felt a very big connection. Obviously, when your teacher in some senses becomes, in your own mind, sometimes family. So I have felt this maybe outsized connection to the Wolf family since then.
That's beautiful. So Rachel's father was your teacher, and then many years later, Avi Zichrono Livracha became your son Hirsch's teacher.
Right.
Can you speak to that, Rachel? Can you tell us a little bit about Avi as a teacher and his relationship with Hirsch and his classmates?
Avi taught in Himmelfarb in Yerushalayim, and he was Hirsch's teacher for 7th and 8th grade for Limudei Kodesh, for Jewish studies. I'm not sure exactly what category, but later when we had a meal together, Avi was so wholeheartedly excited and happy and interested in seeing Hirsch. He was already taller, and I could see his whole body and excitement in his eyes with a twinkle, like, he loves his students, he loves Hirsch. And there was a video after October 7th that went viral, how you say, circulated, with Anel Shapira, who was killed on the 7th, and Hirsch the same day that Hirsch was stolen, and later Ben Zusman, who fell in battle. And these 3 adorable young men, there's a video of them in 7th or 8th grade for their bar mitzvah project or something. That video, Avi he took that video. So he, the loss that he felt as a teacher of these wonderful boys was very big.
I remember you shared with me in November, after Dvir Barazani from Himmelfarb fell in battle, you shared with me a letter that Avi wrote to his colleagues in Himmelfarb describing this distress of a teacher who was grieving for his students, and he's there on the border in the north. He can't even come and be with the students. And with your permission, we would like to show that video, or a little snippet from this video, in memory of these 4 wonderful people, the 3 boys in the video, and the teacher who loved them and took the video. We are a nation in mourning. We lost so many people. And we're also a nation where we feel connections that go beyond the flesh, beyond family connections. Just like you described, these connections that are formed between teacher and student, in both of your cases, that transcend just the classroom environment. And when I look at this image, and when I hear these young, beautiful voices, and I think of all the teachers and all the neighbors and all the friends who are carrying loss right now, in one degree or another, it's astounding that we're still here standing, to be honest. And I want to delve into this a little bit, into our path this year and everything we've been carrying, you've been carrying. And I want to go back to the image of Rachel, the mother, who, as a mother, advocates for her children's return. As Rachel Imenu, as Jeremiah says, she refuses to be comforted for her children who are gone. I want to ask you, Rachel, in many ways you have become the face of the mother fighting for her child this year. Not a job anyone wishes upon themselves. And I wanted to ask you, where did you find the strength to keep on going like this, to travel all over the world, to talk to people everywhere, day after day after day?
Well, I don't think it really is a choice. I think it is a reflex. I think it is a primal instinct of any mother, any parent, any father, that, and anyone in the animal kingdom, it's not unique to humans, that if you think that your offspring is in danger, that you go. And that was it. And that's what everybody, every hostage family still now, as you well know, we have 101 hostages still being held in Gaza. And it is an unbearable instinct to go. You keep going. And there's no rule book to explain how do you go try to save your child when they're in danger. And that's why we have a real broad spectrum of how you see different people doing it. And there's no judgment, because how can there be? Everyone has to do what they think will save their child. And we, from October 7th, just started to run and started to go. And it just so happens that we have pretty good English. And so we were able to go many places around the world that maybe people who were less comfortable in English didn't necessarily feel was what they were going to pursue. And they were working hard and continue to work hard every single day here, locally, and around the world. But it wasn't a choice, and it wasn't where do you get the strength from. It was simply, you hit someone here and their leg pops up. It's a reflex.
Yeah, no, I understand. And I have to tell you from me personally that I think in the funeral, in Hirsch's funeral, when we all saw that you wore the tape with a new day, that you didn't freeze time on the day Hirsch was murdered, it gave so many people strength to keep fighting. Because we said, if Rachel is capable of seeing the 101 that are still there, then what excuse do we have not to? If she doesn't stop counting time, if she doesn't stop being aware of the reality, then we don't have the privilege to stop. So thank you for that. While you are traveling around the world and fighting for your child, as you said, no choice but to do the best you can in any way open to you. You, Rachel, were at home because Avi was in the north. From October 7th itself, he was already with his unit. He served, as I said before, for over 250 days until he fell in battle. And this whole year, we're neighbors and friends, and I've seen you throughout this year juggling so much on your own. And I feel like I have to put this question to you. What is a man who is children at home, who is over the age when he's supposed to report to reserve duty, who is a rabbi in a school and has many students looking up to him and so many people depending on him in so many circles, why does he go to war? Where does he find it in himself to go to war? And why do you support it at home? Well, Avi, hard for me to say it was. It's still very fresh. A man who loved life and loved people and loved the Torah. And when Am Yisrael, when the people of Israel are in danger, there's no question that you're there to defend. You're there to bring life to the world, because this is what our nation does. Brings life and light and chesed and clarity of vision and depth and justice. This is what our nation does. So it was not a question that he had crossed in his mind, neither in mine. And I agree. It was he served in the army, and I served
with a household of 8 wonderful, adorable, thank God, children, juggling a lot. It was just not a question, and that's interesting because this is our answers. It's not a question. It's needed. It's a reflex. It's obvious.
Can you tell us about it a little bit, though? What was it like, the day-to-day of it?
But it was very challenging. Also having 8 children in different ages. Our oldest is 20 and our youngest is 4.5. And their different needs and different stages in life definitely, had different thoughts that needed to be done. And, starting from, just waking up and getting everybody going, mainly the little ones, because the older ones are more dependent and doing wonderful things in their adolescent and a little beyond. My oldest in the army. But And cleaning up in the kitchen and finishing everything, although we have so many friends who always wanted during these 250 days and did help so much. It's still, I'm the one who wanted to bathe the kids and do it. It's just, it was a lot and challenging. And also the main thing is that for me, Avi is such an educator and such a healthy neshama, healthy soul, that it was just like in his veins to do the right things, to make it, fun with the kids, even though if there was an argument, or like a little fight. He was just so practical and smart and creative and fun and just like, so it came for him naturally. And then I had to be this one.
Yeah. I remember you told me during the year that one of the things that gave you strength were conversations with Avi. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that was the main thing. The conversations were pretty rare and at odd times, but each conversation with him had the meaning of why this is going on. We were forced into a horrible war, starting with a horrible day on October 7th, and giving the meaning of why we have to, wake up and get לשנף מותניים, לנשוך שפתיים. It's a responsibility, and it's just obvious. Like you said, רחל אמנו, she was בדרך, she was on the way, like you said about Rachel, we have to keep walking and doing because we want to bring light. So this is our meaning. We have a goal. We have a way, a place to go that God, wants to bring to the world through our nation and through this Torah. So that's what gave me the strength, his giving meaning to the challenges.
Yeah, I think I knew Avi a little bit, and I saw how much meaning he offered to everybody around him, how tuned he was to the goals, to bringing the hostages home, to fighting for what's right. And I definitely understand and respect very much the contribution he gave to all of us. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry. As you said, Rachel Emenu died on the road. She died as they were on the road home and was buried on the road. And the road is difficult, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in a bit. But along the road, you meet a lot of people. You meet a lot of different groups. And I wanted to ask you, Rachel, about it in these 11 months of advocacy, of traveling, of doing everything you could because you had no choice. You've met so many people here and abroad, Jews and non-Jews, who tried to help, who helped, who cooperated in some ways. I wanted to ask you if you can share a little bit of what it looked like and what it meant and what it gave you.
It was such a bizarre journey that I feel like I'm still on in many ways, but there was this strange juxtaposition of I'm in the midst of being actually tortured. Every single second that I was fighting for Hirsch, I was terrified because I knew that he was suffering, and therefore I was suffering. And yet I was meeting the most benevolent, beautiful, giving, generous, kind people. And how do you marry those two, horror and terror, with beauty and kindness? And that was mostly what I was experiencing and what John was experiencing, my husband, while we were really fighting the fight of our lives. We didn't encounter people who were not open to listening to us. When we were out of the country, everyone that we encountered was ready to hear from us. And I think there was something about Hirsch's story and about all the hostages in many ways. It made everybody think it could be my son. And as soon as people say that to themselves, they're with you. And what really surprised me were so many people in power and influence. We also met normal, regular people like ourselves, but those people were often the most emotionally expressive, the most holding our hands and crying, because there was something about it that just felt like it could have been their person. And of course, the Jewish community rose like warriors to greet us and help us, and were desperate to do everything, and still are desperate to do everything. And that was a magnificent thing to witness, and to go to the non-Jewish world, to so many people across all different brands of the Christian world who embraced us. And I mean, I don't know how to describe it properly, because it was so unusual, and within it, it was so torturous. So it's such a strange path that we've been on. And I feel so confused by what those 330 days were. We buried her 69 days ago. And that's a new, different road. And so trying to digest all of these extremely shattering and unknown experiences is something that we're still trying to untangle and unpack.
Speak about this tension or the juxtaposition between the beauty and the power of the people you met and the difficulty and torture, really, of the struggle. And you speak about the road you've been walking in the past 69 days. So I want to jump ahead a little bit, and I'll get back to you, Rachel, in a minute. But I wanted to ask you, Rachel, you spoke recently in an article you wrote about the difficulty of processing grief when you're both yourself and carrying your own bereavement and your own pain as a family, as an individual, and a public figure, whether you want it or not. You are a public figure, and you are a symbol to many people now. And it seems that once again, there's this weird tension between loving the people who come to you and caring about their pain, but also needing your own space. I wanted to ask if you're willing to elaborate a little bit about that complexity also.
I've learned that it seems that so many people have so much pain that they're carrying around with them at all times. And it could be from a myriad of different experiences. It doesn't have to just be that someone that was your life dies. It can be a lot of different experiences. And yet, I'm known to some people because of our fight and struggle for the 330 days before Hirsch died. And I think it's crushing to me that I'm known for something so terrible, and that when people see me, that they cry. And they're doing that out of a place of love. But it's so difficult being the recipient of other people sharing their pain for loving Hirsch and feeling our loss, and then feeling they also want to share their loss, which is legitimate, and their pain is just like my pain. There's no measuring stick. There's no metrics for pain. That's the problem. And Rachel is a nurse. You know, they have that chart in the hospital, right? And they say, how much is the pain? And there's the smiley face to the really crying face, and there's a 1 to 10. But when it has to do with this kind of existential, soul-filled loss, everybody's at a 10. Everybody's at a 10. And it's just something I'm trying to figure out. How do I carry my 10 and other people's 10s? It's a lot of 10s. And I also have 2 daughters. Hirsch was, which is hard, using was. Hirsch is my oldest. And then I have 2 daughters who I also have to worry about their 10s. They're carrying that. And I don't know the answer. I just am trying to manage it.
Yeah, that is a lot. That is a lot. It's a lot of weight. I can say that I think it's an immense chesed, an act of loving kindness that you share this with us, because it offers the rest of us some guidance. None of us want to hurt anyone. I mean, it gives us guidance. It gives us a sense of how to approach or not approach.
I know. I say to people now, I say, please, please just smile and wave. Just smile and wave. And Rachel and I discussed this the night of Avi's funeral, which you can, because I had at the Shiva for Hirsch, I actually had to put tape on my chest that said, please no hugs. People were grabbing me, and I feel like I have 3rd-degree burns all over my body. So when you grab someone with burns all over their body, it's so painful for them, even though you're coming from a place of love. And so I've really said to people more recently, please just smile and wave. That's, space, air, time.
Time. Yeah, time. As you said, it's a road you're on for 69 days and ongoing.
I'm sorry that I had to ask for your advice and use your experience.
Don't be sorry. Why are you sorry?
Well, for making it more clear to me what my needs are, which was very similar to yours. It's too hurtful. Don't come and wish me now.
Yeah. I can't imagine, but I hear what you're saying, that you're carrying a lot right now, and maybe you don't need to carry us as well, with all the love and with all the sympathy. I want to take a step back for a second and go back to you, Rachel, and talk again about the people we meet along the road. And the truth is that meeting people and fostering connections between people and of all sorts here in Israel, between political camps, across political or religious divides, abroad, here, Jews, non-Jews, is something you and Avi dedicated your life to long before this year. Can you tell us a little bit about that and about what motivated you?
Avi was a person of seeing, everything. Even he would speak to a student or to a soldier or to, and he would understand that, somebody needs to send a message to the mother there, because like his very personal and specific ability and love of people was so big, and is also very קשר חזק, his inner center of love of Israel was so big that he always would do, and he would do and see and teach. So we, he's as a teacher, and when 20 years ago, when a specific kibbutz, non-religious community who wanted to start having Yom Kippur, the high holidays, minyan there, a davening prayer, they connected to him, and he did that for 20 years, and the 3 wonderful years that we had in Memphis, Tennessee, connecting Israelis to them to be connected to Israel, and for us to have new friends from abroad, from diaspora Jews, who are wonderful friends until today. And at home, we had the privilege of hosting Shabbat of a lifetime for Jews and non-Jews who were interested to see what a Jewish home and a Jewish Shabbat meal is, the special light that there is there. And he would also facilitate, perform weddings as a rabbi, weddings for non-religious people who they would come to our house and have like a meeting, like to understand the ceremony. And it wasn't only very technical. It was a lot of heart and a lot of his wanting to understand their family situation and their specific, things that they liked and wanted to have in that special ma'amad. So, and it's endless. It's, with Holocaust survivors and having the year that we had before this past year was where our country was torn between different political ends, tore Avi in his heart. And the only thing, it was so obvious that what we wanted to do was to host and participate in discussions with people from different views and political agendas. And Avi he knew and does know how to listen in such an incredible way, where he really could understand the person and, let go with whatever your opinions are for right now. It wouldn't make him lose his amud shidra, spine, his views. But he was so open and wide in his mind and heart that we were able to have these amazing discussions. He was just very, very, very good.
And we also, and I should say that both of you belong to very loving and supportive communities. You, Rachel, belong to Kehilat Akhel, and you belong to Kehilat Belcha, both of them a few streets away from each other in southern Jerusalem. Very different in the style of prayer and the interpretation of the law, but similar in the connections between people and their love for each other. And I've visited your shiva, and I've seen how your community was upholding you, and I'm part of the community, and we upheld you and got back a lot of inspiration and strength. And this past Shabbat, members of your community, Rachel, baked cakes for members of our community, and they wrote this beautiful note. I'm going to cry. that started from heart to heart and from community to community. And I spoke to someone from your community, and she told me that you got the idea from the Klausner community, yet another South Jerusalem community who did this for you after Hirsch was murdered. And seeing so many people coming together, it's like you said, it's torturous because we don't want the cause. We don't want to have the cause to get together. And it's beautiful at the same time. And it's this weird and intense juxtaposition. And part of what we saw in your Shiva, Michal, is both the effect of how many people Avi was beloved by, because thousands of people came, just like with your Shiva. But we also saw how you and your family worked to continue this legacy of building a community, building connections between people, because you invited politicians to come, but only if they came with someone from the other party, meaning a coalition member had to come paired up with an opposition member and vice versa. And I wanted to ask you, what did it actually look like? I mean, the idea is beautiful, but what did it actually look like? How did it feel?
I assume that people will be surprised to hear this, but it was sincere. They were not putting on a show. Like all couples, said, that in the big Meli'ah, in the Knesset, the voices are very strong, very loud, and the arguments are very with fire. But behind that, there's this parsa, there's an area, a cafeteria, I don't know what exactly, and they're very good friends there, like in every normal workplace. And they were very sincere in their in their excitement of this request in the first place, of how the achdut, we really are one heart. It's a big, huge heart of Am Yisrael. And even with different views, it's big enough to include all of us. All of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to Rachel Imenu and her standing on the road, not just buried on the road, but standing on the road in Jeremiah's vision and crying because her children are on the road to exile. And God basically promising her that one day she will see them coming back on the road home. When I think of this image now, and I listen to your voices and everything you're recounting, what comes to my mind is that we're all on the road in a way I didn't realize we are until 401 days ago. And I don't mean just the road to our immediate and very, very urgent goals. First and foremost, the 101 hostages we still want to see come home, but also returning the residents of the North and the South to their homes, of allowing the soldiers to come home to their families, allowing ourselves to return to some semblance of, I don't know whether normalcy is the right word, but productive life that isn't centered around war. That would be nice. But beyond that, I feel that this war revealed to us that we're still on the road on a more profound level. And I want to take a moment to say something personal for myself. My father, Natan Sharansky, spent 9 years in the Soviet Gulag because he wanted to come to Israel and because he fought for human rights in the Soviet Union itself. And during those years, my mother traveled around the world and advocated for him because she had no choice, like you said. And I was born into the victory story. I was born after, with the help of the entire Jewish people and so many allies beyond the Jewish people, the Soviet Empire was brought to its knees, and my father and the other prisoners of Zions were released, and 1 million Jews left the Soviet Union, and the world changed forever. And I was born into that. I remember even feeling disgruntled that all the good battles were already fought. And I feel so stupid thinking back to that because who wants battles anyway? But on some level, it fostered within me the feeling that we have arrived, that we're done. The story of our return to our land and to sovereignty and to, overall having a good life and building a good society in Israel was over. You had to rearrange the furniture a little bit. We had the pesky conflict with the Palestinians. We had some disagreements amongst ourselves, but it all seemed to me like the details after the big problems were already solved. And I think this year, both the war and the effort it required, but also the disagreements it revealed within ourselves, showed me and so many others that we haven't arrived yet because we're still on the road. We're still figuring out who we are and how we're supposed to work together, and whether beyond, whether people who are not Avi Goldberg can see each other and really understand each other's point of view and work together and figure out what it is that we're trying to build here beyond the war. And with that in mind, with that vision of what's next and what we want to work towards, I wanted to first of all read some of Avi's words in that letter that he sent to you, to his colleagues in Himmelfarb on November 20th after Dvir Barazani, who at the time was the fourth graduate of Himmelfarb to have died in battle. Unfortunately, there's been more since. And he wrote this. It's a longer and very powerful letter. I'm just bringing a little bit. The mind knows so well that we must have faith in our way. It knows that justice is on our side, that this is a war for our existence, and that it will lead to a huge kuma, rising up, standing up, redemption. But the emotion, the pain, is so far from this, and they don't meet, the mind and the emotions. Each in its place, contradicting the other, never drawing close. But we make ourselves strong. We must. We bite our lips, and we keep on with asiya, with doing. And with this in mind, I want to ask each of you, how do we go on? And perhaps it's not a fair question, because you have to struggle with going on your own as individuals and families. But still, how do you go on? Rachel, can I ask you to speak to it first?
Well, there is the question of who is we going on. And I think if we're talking about ourselves as a nation, as a people, as the Jewish people all over the world, there are two things that come to mind. And the first is not meant to be a cliche. I think the idea of hope being mandatory, not a choice, not advice. It's actually a command. You must be hopeful. There's a very precarious divide between being hopeful and falling into despair. And so we have to be very careful. And I think that the lost art of respect is something that we need to refine, and we need to really practice. And as Rachel was describing Avi, I was thinking how a very wise woman named Sippi, who I met with during these last 401 days, said to me, you have to really try to understand the other side. You don't have to agree with them, but you have to open yourself up to really understand when they're explaining why they feel, how they feel. You need to be ready to hear and listen. And we've perfected shouting and screaming and yelling and insulting. We get A+ in all of those. And now it's time to really do what's hard. What's hard is holding lihitapek, to hold back and listen, to hold back and try to understand, to hold back and have respect. And I think that that's our biggest challenge right now as a people, as a nation, and we have no choice.
Just like you had no choice, we don't have a choice if we want to survive and thrive. I agree. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. How do you want to share your thoughts? I know it's very fresh for you. It's been a little over 2 weeks.
I'm connecting to Rachel completely. Like you're saying, really understand and respect. I think that the traits that are needed in order to do this and practice it are anava, which in English is not, it's like modesty, humility. Anava, that there's more than just you in this room, in this field, in this world. And so that's anava, one thing, and sablanut, very long patience, because it's a long walk, and it demands a lot of learning and responsibility and love and simcha also. Simcha as joy, yeah, happiness. I always love Hebrew much more than English. Simcha, that this can escort, lelavot, the journey of having anava and sablanut, the humility and the patience to learn so much, to learn both, your truth, connected to history, connected to God, and to learn where they are, what the person in front of me is, what his world is, because he's a whole world. So it demands a lot of patience and
a lot of humility. Speak about a person being a whole world, and we can't reduce either Hirsch nor Avi to one thing. And yet I want to ask you, and I will explain how it's related to Rachel Imenu in a second, if you can think of one thing you want to share with us. And I'll explain first. According to the sages, when the sages look at this text from Jeremiah that I read before, it's not just Rachel's tears, Rachel's tears, that bring about God's compassion. It's the fact that when she lived back in her life, she did a great act. She did one very significant good deed, which is on the eve of her wedding to Jacob, who worked for 7 years to marry her. Her father switched the bride on him and brought his daughter Leah instead. But Rachel and Jacob suspected something like this might happen, and they exchanged a series of signs, simanim. But when Rachel, when it got to that hour and she saw her sister there, and she realized how embarrassed her sister was going to be when it's going to be revealed to everybody that it's her under the veil, she gave the signs to Leah. She passed them on. And it's this one good deed, overcoming her own very natural desire and jealousy, that convinces God that he can overcome his anger with us and extend clemency and compassion instead. Which, by the way, I love, because it gives room for jealousy and anger and resentment also from the divine level, and yet invites us and God to overcome it. What it teaches me is that our good deeds outlast our life. Their meaning outlasts our life. And I would like to ask you, if you can choose one thing, a good deed or a good trait of Hirsch first and Rav Avi, that we, all of us listening here, can then take with us as we pray to God and say, look at these beautiful souls, and please have compassion on us and help us bring our hostages home, help us finish this war, help us return our people to their homes, help us thrive, help us work towards that future of patience and humility and respect and love and hope that you're both describing so powerfully. Rachel.
I smile because I think about Hirsch and the one word that John and I used over the past 401 days so much when people would say, how could you describe Hirsch in one word? Which is, of course, the most reductive question there is on earth. But we realized right away early on that it was respect, because Hirsch a few years ago came to us to explain that he was not going to be keeping Shabbat anymore the way that we were keeping Shabbat. he said, for now, but he wanted to be honest. And he said, but in your home, of course, I'm always going to be respectful. And I thought, well, how is that going to work? And I saw, first of all, I never saw Hirsch without a kippah on his head. Even if he was coming to meet me at work or he was coming to the grocery store to help me, he always wore a kippah. He always, in the house, was just very much respectful of our way of life. But the thing that most demonstrated that is he continued to come with us to Beit Knesset, which when you're taking a break and you are not keeping Shabbat the way your parents are, for you to go to Beit Knesset, to go to synagogue with your family, both because we're two service kind of people. We go Friday night and we go Shabbat morning, and he would go to both. And I asked him last summer of 2023, we were talking at some point, and I said, why are you still coming with us to Beit Knesset, to synagogue? And he said, because I don't want Dad to sit alone. And that summed him up. And we actually had people come to us during the Shiva who we did not know, who told us that their children, who had also a few years ago decided maybe they were going to be celebrating Shabbat or differently or choosing a different path than they had grown up with, that their children had said, in honor, in the merit of Hirsch and in the hostages coming home, we're coming to Beit Knesset with you. We're coming to synagogue with you. And then we might be leaving and doing something different. But it was just that, showing respect to parents specifically, which I think, again, is something that is very different today than it was when I was growing up versus when my parents were growing up, my grandparents. I think, unfortunately, in many families, that's been watered down. And so I really feel that is something, specifically, and specifically in the 10 Commandments, honor your father and mother, is something that I would love, whatever that means to someone. That doesn't mean you have to go to synagogue with your parents. It doesn't mean that you have to always, we joke about it now. Hirsch always, when he saw me with a bag, would say, let me carry your bag. And so now my girls always say, let me carry your bag. And they say, this is for Hirsch. So I would say that's something that if people can just cherry pick, what is that one little demonstration of respect that you can do, and that would be something that would really hopefully help in the merit, in the zchut, that the 101 hostages return home, and that Hirsch and his neshama will have an ilui.
Amen.
Thank you, Rachel.
It's interesting that you were talking about Kibud Olim, because that was it was the main thing that Avi fell in love with me. And you spoke about my father. So it wasn't hard to be mechabed my parents, because they're so amazing.
They are. They're honorable. So
those are one of the things that Avi fell in love with me. I want to put this in, and I don't know how it relates to the question, but I want to say that during the Shiva and on Friday, a few days ago, I went to give a hug to the woman, the wife of the guy who was Avi's children, who was together with him, that he was injured, anush, very badly in the same battle where Avi was killed with another. Now there are 6 that were killed in that same battle in Lebanon. So during the Shiva, and also seeing Reut, the wife, I went to hug her before the funeral. the soldiers coming, all this, love and effort. It was both those two things. It's love, mesirut nefesh, and effort. I'm wearing these green uniform because we have to, because we have such horrible enemies. And we are brothers in a way that, for me, seeing them, I felt like this is like the pillow that I want to rest my soul in. All these soldiers that are incredible. So I think that's what it is: love and effort, and how do you say, lasim lev, being attentive. That Avi always was he attentive to needs, to things. If there's anything to do in his big doings, like from being the one to sweep the floor and the one who to make the lecture, and with the children, and like I said, with his very broad doing, it was always being attentive beyond, like having that good eye and good words and excitement of people, because that's what just he was.
So in the merit of Hirsch and his kaved avichavet yimecha, his honoring of his parents, and in the merit of the soldiers who are risking life and limb, as we know very well, and are there as brothers and sisters fighting for all of us, and in the merit of Rav Avi and his unique way of looking at people with love and attentiveness and excitement, like you described the way he looked at Hirsch, grown Hirsch, no longer a little kid. May our prayers, may our tears, may the tears of all the mothers and all the women and all the men go to the heavens. May God have compassion on us, and may we have compassion on each other. And together may we indeed give birth to a better future and a better world. Thank you so much, Rachel and Rachel, for sharing yourselves with us.
Amen.